All right, today we're diving into something really fascinating. We're taking a look inside the mind of, quite literally, one of the most recognized human beings on the entire planet. We're going to be breaking down this sprawling, incredibly candid recent interview with Cristiano Ronaldo to decode the core facets of his mindset. And obviously, whether you're a massive football fanatic or you're just intrigued by the psychology of ultimate success, there is so much to unpack in this explainer about drive, wealth, loyalty, and the hidden, often heavy costs of global fame.
So, we've structured this analysis into 4 logical pillars to make it easy to digest. First, we'll look at his reflections on the pitch. Second, his billionaire business empire. Third, family, tragedy, and loyalty. And finally, the reality of fame. Let's get right into it.
Section 1, Reflections on the Pitch, and his drive for unprecedented greatness.
Now just let this staggering number sink in for a second. 1,000. Ronaldo recently crossed the 948 career goal mark, and reaching a clean 1,000 goals is his ultimate measurable milestone. But here's the really crazy part about his trajectory. His scoring rate has actually accelerated since he turned 30. While most athletes inevitably slow down, he points out that by focusing incredibly hard on mental freshness and trusting his pure instincts in the penalty box, he's actually become a more lethal, natural finisher in the latter half of his career.
It's really interesting when he reflects on his turbulent second stint at Manchester United because his analytical view of the game really shines through here. He draws a very sharp contrast. He has immense respect for the club's past structure under Sir Alex Ferguson. That structure that famously nurtured young talent. But he offers a really honest critique of their present situation, noting that the club has gone backwards and currently lacks that foundational base for the future. And what's key here is he isn't holding grudges. He's just coldly looking at the structural reality of a club he says he still holds very close to his heart. So the crucial point is how he measures his own worth against the critics. When faced with people dismissing his recent goal-scoring records just because he plays in the Saudi League, his response is brutally simple. He says, excuses is the most simple way for everything. He points out that playing in 40-degree heat is absolutely no joke, and ultimately, the numbers just don't lie. In fact, if he were dropped back into the Premier League tomorrow, he confidently states he would score at the exact same rate.
Which naturally leads us to a pretty heavy question. Could Cristiano Ronaldo ever actually imagine retiring? For a guy whose entire identity has been built around scoring goals and chasing that specific adrenaline rush, he makes a surprisingly vulnerable admission. He admits that when that inevitable day finally comes, he will likely cry. He completely acknowledges that absolutely nothing outside of football will ever match that specific thrill, even though he's actively preparing his mind and his life for that massive transition.
Moving on to Section 2, the billionaire business empire, and moving beyond material wealth. At age 39, he achieved a massive, highly calculated milestone. He became the first ever billionaire in football history. And the big takeaway here is that this wasn't an accident. Not at all. He explicitly states that alongside winning trophies and golden balls, reaching this specific financial number was a lifelong goal. He planned for it. He knew that if he maintained absolute peak performance on the field, the brand revenue would inevitably follow. Just to give you a sense of the sheer unmatched scale of his brand today, look at his recent jump into YouTube. He amassed a record-breaking 76 million subscribers in just a few short months. That's insane. And he's treating this new venture not as a distraction, but as a fresh challenge. It's a way to learn new skills and connect differently, proving his empire is still rapidly expanding.
But here is where the narrative really shifts. Keep in mind, this is a guy who owns a Global Express private jet. He has literally lost count of his cars, guessing he owns somewhere between 40 and 60 of them, including multiple Bugattis that he buys purely as investments and doesn't even drive anymore. But then he says, the money gives you opportunity, but I'm in a moment of my life that I don't care anymore about that. It's fascinating. The material items simply no longer fuel his passion the way they did back in his 20s.
So we really have to ask, what exactly anchors a billionaire who already has everything? When you can buy whatever you want without ever glancing at the price tag, what actually keeps you grounded in reality?
That brings us to Section 3, family, tragedy, and loyalty. Getting to know the man behind the brand. A core part of his private life revolves around what he calls the 4 a.m. club. These are the tight-knit members of his absolute inner circle. He values loyalty above all other human traits. Why? Well, because as a billionaire, loyalty is one of the very few things he literally cannot buy on Amazon. He keeps a highly protective, lifelong group of friends around him, the kind of people who would jump out of bed at 4 a.m. to help him, no questions asked, if he called.
To really see this loyalty in action, just trace this timeline. It's an incredible story. At age 13, Ronaldo was so poor and hungry at the Sporting Lisbon Academy that he and his friend Jose used to literally beg for free leftover burgers at a local McDonald's. At 14, when Jose was about to be cut from the academy, Ronaldo begged the directors to let him stay, going as far as squeezing an extra bed into his dorm room. Fast forward to age 39, that exact same friend, Jose, is now the CEO of his current club, Al Nassr. He absolutely never forgets where he came from or who stood by him.
But, of course, life hasn't just been victories and highlights. He has had to navigate some truly devastating personal tragedies, most notably the heartbreaking loss of his baby son and the shocking recent death of his 28-year-old national teammate Diogo Jota. Through these incredibly intense periods of grief, his mindset is to somehow find balance. He notes that, quote, even in the worst moments, you have to make the things move. It's a really somber reminder of the fragility of life, and it pushes him to focus heavily on the present rather than always making long-term plans.
When you combine that immense personal grief with the reality that he cannot step outside without being completely mobbed, it begs the question, doesn't it? What is the true cost of being the most famous man on earth?
Which leads into our final pillar, Section 4, the reality of fame and the crushing weight of the world's eyes.
On one hand, he totally recognizes the power of his platform. I mean, he is the most followed person on Instagram globally. He states a genuine desire to use this unmatched influence to promote world peace. He even neutrally mentions his interest in sitting down with former U.S. President Donald Trump, specifically because he views the U.S. presidency as a vehicle that can, quote, make things happen globally regarding peace. It's a prime example of how he views his massive fame as a potential tool for global impact.
But, on the other hand, that fame is incredibly restrictive. For instance, he faced some public criticism for not attending the funeral of his teammate Diogo Jota. But his logic is actually very revealing. He says that wherever he goes, a media circus inevitably follows. He purposefully avoids sensitive, tragic events in public because he absolutely refuses to let his fame distract from the grieving families. He prefers to pay his respects behind the scenes, far, far away from the cameras.
Of course, he definitely still maintains a sense of humor about his image. When someone jokingly compared his looks to David Beckham's, Ronaldo playfully fired back that if both of them were walking down the Copacabana beach in just their swimwear, he would definitely get more attention. He knows his brand, he knows his image, and he really isn't afraid to lean into the confidence that built it all.
But here is perhaps the most shocking revelation of our entire analysis today. When asked if he could keep all his football success and keep all the wealth, but trade away all of his fame, he immediately says yes, 100%. The most followed man on the planet admits that lacking anonymity is just exhausting. He literally says, I never want to be famous, it's boring.
So the crucial point we are left with is this. If the world's most successful athlete, a guy who meticulously planned his rise to a billion-dollar empire, would trade all of his global fame for a quiet life, what does that actually say about the true value of being known? It's a fascinating look at the absolute peak of human success, and a powerful reminder that the things we can't buy, peace, anonymity, and true loyalty, are almost always the things we end up valuing the most. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.